I'm joined by staff from Hunningley Primary School. I'm just going to hand over to them just for a very quick introduction of who they are and what their role is in school. So Sarah, do you want to kick off?
Yep, so I'm Sarah Hurst. I'm currently teaching in Year 1 and I was the first teacher in our school to experience the remote learning. So,
Emma?
Hello, I'm Emma Hames and I'm Assistant Ed. I've not got a class, so I'm based out of class and just supporting on remote learning.
Well, I was really grateful that you can join me this morning to just share your experiences and some of your top tips for other teachers. I want to start by asking you really, what do you think the benefits are of using Teams for live lessons as opposed to an asynchronous approach, like you might have done previously through Sway, for example?
I do think it's really useful because the children then can carry on with the same kind of scheme of learning that they would have had in school. They're not missing out on anything by being at home. I know that you might have the issue of people not logging on, but if you provide that for them, then they can keep up completely with what they should have been doing in school. Rather than, if we were sharing PowerPoints or sharing worksheets, we have no way of knowing whether that's been completed or not. And at least with Teams, you can see who's logging on, you can see which children have accessed that content. And hopefully, it will narrow that gap when they do return to school. There won't be as big a gap to bridge when they come back.
Sarah, do you think there's a better engagement with work if you do a live lesson?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's nice as well for the children to be able to see their teacher and to hear their teacher going through it as they would normally be used to. When I did the live learning, initially I was at home and I had children in school in my class, but I also had children accessing who were at home, quite a big group of children from home. And I think they really enjoyed being able to still be part of the lesson. So, using the raise hand feature and actually being chosen to answer a question. And just, still feeling part of it. Whereas if they were doing that at home, maybe with their adult, they could have that conversation with their adult, but they wouldn't feel part of the class like they did by logging on to the home learning.
I think for me, from a whole school point of view, it's really important. It's really important for staff workload as well. So what we were finding is that we're making lots of paper copies of things, and then that had to be distributed to people in the community that were self-isolating. Whereas, it shouldn't be actually creating any more work for you. It's just being able to turn your camera on, share your screen, upload your files to Teams. That's sort of like a long-term solution rather than sort of getting these paper packs ready, which takes a lot of time, a lot of preparation. You're doing things twice. I think for teachers, and I understand it can be a bit scary and nervy at first, but once we get into it, I think for long term, it's much better.
Yeah, thanks for that. The next sort of point that I wanted to raise, because I think a lot of teachers are kind of slightly nervous of live lessons because of the managing behaviour aspects, because it's all new, not only to staff, but to the children as well. So have you got any kind of tips or experience where you've had to manage difficult or challenging behaviour in a live lesson?
We've sent out the acceptable use policy to parents, so we've shared that and we've put it on his website, and we've also been training the children in school, and one of our teachers who was not here today, she's been making videos like how to log on to 365, how to access a Teams meeting. So we've been able to actually teach the children to do that and then talk through things about having your microphone muted, using your raised hand. Is one of the things that staff have been really concerned about, if there were behaviour in their class and there were children at home. And what we've said is just take your visualizer out. Just if there's anything that sort of you think you don't want on camera, it's too noisy, or there's something happening that you don't want, then just take it out and you can just stop lesson then straight away. It's just a quick way to do it. But we've not had that at all. Some staff have been worried about having to speak to children in front of, obviously, when other parents could be watching. But we've said that, we should always be teaching like somebody's watching and like the parents are watching. So we should always be doing that in a kind, respectful way. And I think just saying to a child, look, will you just put your pen down? I think that's okay. That's fine. It's not totally identifying the child because they're not on camera. We're not saying second names. And that's something that I think we'd all feel comfortable doing in front of parents.
I think in terms of, in my experience, obviously, because I was at home, there was another adult in my class who was supporting the children in there. So in terms of behaviour management, that was their job to support that. The one thing that was tricky to begin with, because these children are obviously, 5 and 6 years old, as soon as they learned how to unmute themselves, that is what they did. So obviously I had to get them used to me saying, right, I'm going to mute you all now so that you can have a go at your activity. And then we did have a few kind of unmuting, but for no particular reason. They just like to unmute. And then we'd obviously get that background noise, which could be quite tricky. So it was just those reminders, really, just those reminders of, use your mute button. If you need to speak or ask a question, you can unmute, but make sure you're raising your hand as well so that we know you do want to talk. And they got used to it. I only ended up doing it for 3 days, but by the second day, they'd got the hang of it. So
yeah, that kind of code of conduct approach is very important, isn't it? In terms of sharing content, were you able to do that, and what type of things did you share when you were doing a kind of a live lesson?
So for me, it was all kind of based around my PowerPoint. So it did obviously mean that everything needed to be visual on my PowerPoint. If I use phonics as an example, normally we'd use flashcards. We might have different things there for the children to look at if I was there in person, which because I was told to isolate during the holidays, I didn't have any of my phonics resources at home with me. So it was kind of changing my way of displaying that, and, having the flashcards on the screen rather than as a physical card, and just making sure that everything I needed them to see was on my PowerPoint. And it did seem to work really well. And I know it's useful for the teachers who don't particularly want to be on screen, that they can just share that screen and have their voice talking over it. So, they don't have to worry about being on camera or any of that side of it, but the children can still see and hear everything that they need to see and hear.
Yeah, and did you have to kind of modify that content very much? You obviously you talked about putting the flashcards on. Did you have to shorten lesson content, or was it pretty much as normal?
Most of it stayed the same. In terms of when we did literacy, that tended to be a bit of a shorter input from me, and then the children were given time to do their activity. And I did give them a little bit longer than I probably would in class, just to make sure they could have a really good go at that, and obviously to give parents a bit of time to support them if they needed to as well, because for most of our children, the parents were there with them, and they were sat next to them, just making sure they were all okay. So yeah, I'd probably give them a little bit longer in their literacy, but in terms of phonics and reading and things like that, I kind of just stuck to the normal times and the normal process.
We've set teachers some challenges where they've had to use the visualisers to teach a lesson. So it might be like modelling some counting or some handwriting, and then use the visualiser while they're at the board. So we're trying to just do little things each week, just so that we get more confident. It's just we've had a few technical issues with how to use your pen when you're videoing and you're sharing your screen. So there's been a few little things like that, but really good at just sort of working those out. We've got a WhatsApp group where we've got a thread basically where people can say, I found this works, or I'm struggling with this, has anybody got any solutions? So lots of troubleshooting in that way, just because we're all learning on the job really. It's totally new to everybody, but that seems to be working.
Yeah, good. I mean, that kind of leads me on to that general kind of support for staff. Obviously, it's a lot of new things for staff to take on. How have you been able to kind of give them that support and confidence they need to kind of move forward with this?
I think with Sarah sort of championing it, that's really helped, and she's been there to answer lots of questions. Again, we've had email threads where we've come up to do as parents meeting where people can put sort of comments and questions. I've been the one that's worked with IT and gone back to IT, and they've been amazing and gave lots of support, and sort of changed things and done things so that we've said this is what we want to do, and they've figured it out how we can do it. So using IT support, having someone in school to champion it. It always works better with the app for parents and for staff as well. So we always use the app, and we've really, really promoted that on his Facebook site and on his letters, everything about downloading the app, and just really making parents. So we've had a parents meeting, and we've really been like loyal to it and said, we really want you to do it on Teams, and we've been quite adamant with that, and we've really, really pushed them and said, no, we'll support you, we'll help you, we'll talk you through it, but we absolutely want you to use it so that when your children are off, it's much easier then for them to engage. So I think that's helped. And just talking things through with staff and just letting them know that, you know, from an SLT point of view, that, you know, we've got your back and we appreciate that this is difficult and we'll look after you and support you, but we really, you know, we need to do it.
I think as well that having that time to practice, like Emma said, because you don't know what the issues are, do you, until you actually use it. I know people have got a lot of things they're worried about just thinking about it. But then as soon as, I know when a lot of people tried it, they were actually, oh, it's not that bad, really. I just need to figure out how to do this, this and this. You know, it is just one of those things you've got to try. I was very scared for it the first time I did it, obviously, because I was at home as well. So it was a little bit different. And, you know, within the first hour, it was absolutely fine. You know, when you've got used to it and you know all the different features and you know that the kids can hear you and they're all joining in, you know, it just becomes something that you can do.
I think if staff practice in a safe place with each other and or from home or streaming to each other's classroom, that feels more protected. Lots of staff have streamed just to be sort of sat in office, just being able to, and then I've been able to feed back and said, you know, oh, this is what you can see, this is what it looks like. And I've been able to say, you know, children will get so much from this, from watching this lesson, much more than what they would if they were at home or just working through a paper copy. It does offer that structure. So yeah, practice and you'll get your confidence, and then just one little step each week where you try something new.
Yeah, thanks for that. I was just kind of want to finish up really with a question about parents. You mentioned, you know, you're kind of using Teams as your primary communication with them. How have they adapted to it? How have they responded? Have you had any feedback from parents about what you're doing with your, you know, your live lessons and your use of Teams?
I mean, we work in a really tough community and it can be hard to engage with parents anyway. But what we've done is we've created some videos. So some have been we've done some for staff as well, actually. So one of our members of staff, Rachel, who's really good on Teams, and she's really good at making these videos. She's worked with Sarah, and they've just created some like little user-friendly videos basically that we've shared with parents, and we've found that, you know, actually them physically seeing us logging on as if they were the child and sort of doing, then you do this and modelling it and sharing that screen, that's worked really well. So we've had good feedback about that, and we've had a lot of feedback from teachers when they've done parents meetings saying they've been surprised how many parents have engaged. I think lots of people have used FaceTime and WhatsApp, FaceTime, all those sort of things in lockdown, so it's just a different platform, but people are quite confident with it.
I think initially the parents were very much like the staff in terms of, you know, as soon as you say it's going to be through a video call, they panicked a little bit. But as soon as you let the parents know that this is something they can just download on their phone or their tablet, and it, you know, once you've got the app, you've got it, then you've got your login, you know, you can use it whenever you need to use it. And I think out of my class, I've got a class of 26, and I think 20 of them managed to log on the day and managed it absolutely fine. So, you know, once I said to all the parents, you've done it now, you're on, like you've worked out how to do it. And next time it'll be a doddle. You'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, primary schools, because obviously you're relying on parents a lot with support. And as year sixes, we've been able to, and fives, we've been able to do a lot of training, you know, with those children so that they can do it themselves. But for younger children, yeah, we are relying on parents. So communications have to be really good, and that's why we've used those videos.
Yeah, thanks for that. And just want to finish off really, if you had to kind of give you know, some of your fellow colleagues some, you know, quick tips on Teams, just think about, you know, your top 2 or 3 tips, what would they be to just try and, you know, summarize that very, very kind of quickly?
I think my main one would be just have a go. You don't have to be perfect today. It's definitely a journey, but just taking that first step and doing it and practicing it in a safe space to start with. But I think sometimes thinking through every single little thing, it's difficult because you're creating problems that actually aren't there. But just doing it and having a go and playing around with it, and yeah, being open to it. I think that'd be my tip.
I think for me, it's don't do things twice. You know, adapt your planning in a way that, you know, it's going to be accessible for those children at home, but also for those children in school. You know, like I say, I've changed my PowerPoints. You know, that's just how I'm going to work from now on. You know, it's going to be something that's just natural to me now, but it means that everyone will be able to access that, the children in school and the children at home. And then, like you say, sharing your files through Teams as well. So not worrying, you know, if the children can't print it out, you know, give them that option. If they want to print your resources out, they can do, even if they just want to look at it on the screen, and that's a little bit easier, but not thinking that you have to do things twice, once for the children in school and once for the children at home, because, you know, they can access everything that you're putting out there.
That's great. Well, thanks very much for sharing those tips and your insights into Teams. I'm sure teachers throughout the group will find it really useful. So thanks very much, Sarah and Emma, for joining me to share that this morning.
No problem.
No problem.